Hello and welcome to this episode of Behind the Music. Today we'll be looking at my cover of Genova from Final Fantasy VII. If you haven't heard it already, I highly suggest listening to the cover so that you don't spoil yourself. There should be a link right above me and down in the video description. So without further ado, let's have a look at this beast of a song. Woo! So look at the state of this. This is an absolute mess. And we're gonna try and sift through this as fast as we can. Notice at the top we've got the green, orange, and red bars. So the green is phase 1, then you got phase 2 for orange, and then red is phase 3. I basically structured this in the same way like a Final Fantasy VII remake song would be for their boss music. So I especially actually more or less kind of half scored this to the Genova boss fight. So what I did is basically use chapter select, play the game, recording some footage, but made sure to turn the music off so that I have just the sound effects and voices. And then I just sort of went ham. So we're going to look at the first phase at the moment. As a whole, this arrangement is based on the Piano Collections version again. Just like Via Purifico and just like Bluefields before. This is based on the Piano Collections. So what we have, let's have a listen actually to a bit of the Piano Collections just so you can get an idea. So right off the bat, that starts off with a nice sort of like piano melody that I basically just transformed into strings. So isolating the piano and the strings, you can hear it here. Now, interestingly, what the piano arrangement doesn't do is make heavy use of that very famous arpeggiated melody that we all come to know and love from Genova, which goes like... You really only hear it like in one very tiny section of the Piano Collection version. So I made sure to have that melody run more or less throughout the arrangement. So you'll hear it everywhere in the piano from like, I've got harps doing it. I've got a few synth instruments. So while following along with the Piano Collection version, I decided to add a few bits that are very reminiscent to the OG version of Genova. The first phase really is actually a mixture of the Piano Collection version and the original version. I decided to meld some of the ideas together. So some of the iconic bits from the original didn't translate into the Piano Collection version, but I decided to put them in there. So stuff like the da-da-da-da-da with the snares and the trumpet, for example. As usual, the melody is led by the violin. What's interesting about phase 1 is that it doesn't really follow the melody in the same structure as the original. Sometimes it repeats the same. Sometimes it repeats itself. It adds on new bits, which if you've listened to the cover already, then you'll probably have realized it doesn't really follow the same structure at first. So at a certain point, the arrangement doesn't so much change its tempo, but changes its rhythm that makes it sound like it's changed its tempo. Basically, I have a rhythm that goes... And then immediately it changes into a rhythm of just fourth notes. So this goes bam 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 boom 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 boom, and then the timpani and the bass drums and the snares change up their rhythm to reflect that too. So See, now everything sounds more urgent. Sounds more militant too. So that's what this sounds like altogether. So I change up the rhythm again to something that sounds a bit more bouncy, just momentarily, before going back to my thoughts. So that section is from the piano collections again. But I extended it. And you can still hear that melody coming from the harps. I want to make sure it's pretty much everywhere. As you can see, the purple lines, it's everywhere in the track. It serves as a reminder that no matter how weird the arrangement sounds, this is still the Genova you know. So the piano collection does something interesting towards the end, where it adds another key change, and it does some interesting bass changes. So it goes something like and that ends phase one, basically. It's a lot. It's very different. The structure is very different. It sounds rather bright and bouncy in nature, with a section that reminds me of Masashi Hamauzu. But that's phase one. Moving on to phase two is actually the longest phase of the entire arrangement. Mostly phase two is my, okay, Jerry, time to go crazy. Do what the hell you want. And so I did. So it continues a little bit with the piano collection version, but I slow it down. In fact, it fits the visual. Actually, I made it fit.
It's on. Here goes. That's it.
So this section is like an original section from the piano collections version. So it slows down towards the end of that like piano, that chord progression. But here I keep it the same tempo, basically. And now this is the part where everything, basically, I take the melody of a Genova and go a mile with it. So now this section starts in 7/4 time signature. I love me some good 7/4 time signature. So everything is going to sound a little bit weird, but this is where the piece really starts to get really epic and cinematic. So you can still hear the melody for Genova. With some alterations too. And so for this section, I'm going to demonstrate. I needed the key to go to a F minor, but I was currently on G sharp minor. So what I did was modulate the key by going something like this. Now I'm on F minor. And the reason why I needed to be on F minor is because maybe you might recognize this little melody right here. maybe I'll give a little bit more context by adding bass line. Does that sound familiar? If not, well, it is Genova Absolute. I decided, hey, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to throw Genova Absolute into this Genova arrangement because why not, right? So I start teasing little bits of it. But you know what I hear a lot is that the intro for Genova Absolute and the intro for Those Who Fight, the main battle theme for Final Fantasy VII, their intros sound rather similar. So I thought, hell, why not put Those Who Fight in the arrangement too? And then the true core of Genova Absolute comes into play. I decided to time this like orchestral hit with the visual of Aerith using Sorcerer's Storm. I also decided to sprinkle in the Final Fantasy prelude melody in there as well too. So, interesting bit of trivia. This melody right here on the violins it's actually an original melody that I used for my actual Genova Absolute cover, which I did about a year ago. So after that Genova Absolute section, it goes back into 4x4 pretty seamlessly too. This is an original section that I basically created just so that I could interestingly move from the F minor key to a D minor key because I was going to need the D minor key for the next section. So basically it does it's a series of key changes which goes from F minor to C minor then to D minor. Now for what is potentially the most controversial section of this entire arrangement, but I wanted to add it in because I can do anything. I decided to put something that is remnants of grime or trap music that I wanted to diversify the arrangement, as it were. I decided to add in the melody. Also, actually, what I forgot to mention is that one of the other melodies in this section do you recognize it? If not, it is actually the City of the Ancients or the Forgotten City theme. So I just made it fast. Decided to bring in the true version of the Genova. So starting off with the classic drum rhythm, which doesn't continue, because in the original that pretty much continues throughout the entire piece. In this version, I then eventually opt for a more traditional drum rhythm. I added in a bass guitar to do the classic bassline melody. And then I introduced the synths that you hear. Also, you might have heard a guitar. I did add a guitar a strumming guitar that runs throughout this section. It's not there to be heard, but more to be felt. But yeah, essentially phase 3 is a repeat of most of what makes phase 1, but it's restructured to sound a lot more like the original. I have a synth doing the melody along with the violins. And finally, I saved the ending for last because I couldn't have the ending section in the middle of the arrangement. It wouldn't feel right. So I decided to put that lovely, victorious section right at the end, which is actually based on the Piano Collection version again. So it's sounds a little different, and it's extended a bit more to make it sound a lot more like a finale than anything. So this track really isn't meant to loop seamlessly. And that's pretty much the piece. Like I mentioned before, at this moment in time, it's finished in terms of like from start to finish. I just need to go back and add some bells and whistles and go over some parts that I missed. But otherwise, yeah, you will have already listened to the full completed version by the time this video is out. But that was Genova. I spent 3 nights, maybe. I want to say 2 nights and like 1 day where I worked on it for like 12 hours straight. I really enjoyed making this, and I really hope you enjoyed listening to the cover if you've listened to it already. But yeah, no, that's me. So if you like the video, then please give it a like, maybe subscribe if you haven't already, if you like the music stuff that I'm doing. And yeah, I'll be doing more of these again for more covers. But until next time, take care, stay safe, and stay awesome.